and the humility to be here with you today. Thank you for the invitation, for the organizers. Thank you very much.
Hold on, you need to wait.
Oh.
Dana's gonna.
Can I put you know?
You need to be introduced.
Oh, I needed more introduction.
Well, before we start, I just want to extend a huge thank you to Allie Whelan for planning this wonderful event and for sort of starting all of past medical histories. I got a lot out of it, and I think it's very promising in the future. So thank you very much. So good evening, and thank you so much for joining us at tonight's Past Medical Histories lecture. We are privileged to have Dr. Azzam from the Department of Neuroscience and the Department of Cell Biology as our keynote speaker. Many of us know Dr. Azzam from Gross Anatomy Lab and the Medical Neuroscience module. Dr. Azzam also teaches courses that are part of the Nurse Anesthesia and Special Master's programs. In all of these roles, Dr. Azzam inspires students to learn the intricacies of the human body. His positive spirit and commitment to teaching have made him a well-loved laboratory and classroom instructor. Tonight, he will provide a different kind of lesson as he shares with us the most important lessons he has learned throughout his career. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Azzam.
Thank you very much. And I just want to make a confession that in the 51 years I have been married to my wife, she never attended a single lecture of mine. Tonight, she will not only bring her daughter and her sister to listen to this lecture. Thank you very much. I have made an outline here that you should be able to follow, okay? And I have outlined it with the beginning, from the very, I didn't begin with my early history. It's very complicated and time-consuming. So I began it in 58 to 59 academic year. At that time, I was at the American University in Beirut, Lebanon, AUB. In my senior year, before graduation, I needed 3 more credit hours to graduate. And so one of my classmates said, "Hey, Dr. Azzam, Nabil, there is a course given at BCW for 1 credit hour. We qualify to go there." I said, "BCW, man, that's not AUB. BCW is Beirut College for Women." I said, "Can we qualify?" He says, "Yes, 1 credit hour. What's the name of the course?" Radio Broadcasting Skills. When does it meet? Friday afternoon from 1 to 3, 4. I said, "Perfect, man." So Friday, I shaved and showered and pushed myself with aftershave lotion and cologne and head out to BCW. There were 3 men in the class, the instructor and the 2 of us from the biology department. We were hoping for a date. Come on, Friday afternoon. Beautiful young ladies in the class. But the competition was so fierce. Who is going to give the best broadcast? Lies, of course, we did manufacture it. It didn't materialize in any day. What materialized is 1 grade of A. The only grade of A I have ever earned in my entire academic career. So that was 1. Then I needed 2 more credits. We canceled 1 is fine. There was a course called Technique for Histology in the Department of Biology. I asked, what does it do? You learn how to make slides, sections, and whatever. Oh, we signed up for it. We need 2 credit hours. So the technique was to take human element tissue, fix it in formalin, embed it in, clear it and embed it in paraffin, make sections and stain them with HNE. Simple technique. We did that. The second part of the course was to take chick embryos from harvested chicks in the incubator at different ages and load them in paraffin and so on. Load them in perma. And so the instructor came to me one day, professor, he said, "What are you going to do after you graduate?" I said, "I'm going to look for a job." He says, "Why don't you take your sections and go see Dr. William M. Shanklin in the Department of Anatomy at the American University in Beirut?" Now, I didn't wait. I just did my section and went across. to the campus, and I showed him Dr. Shanklin. He looked at him under his microscope and he said, okay man, you're good. When you graduate, come work for me. I'm going to pay you $150 US a month. Man, that was lots of money. So I graduated in June 1959. I worked for Dr. Shanklin. I became his technician. Eventually, he promoted me to research assistant, promoted me to more money, gave me $250 a month. For that kind of money, I said, hey, we can afford to get married. So my lovely high school chum and I got married in 1961, and then the nagging began. Are you going to remain a research assistant the rest of your life? I said, no, Sita, what can I do? We need to apply for graduate school. None was available at the AUB. So she sat down with a portable Smith Corona typewriter. Many of you have never seen one. And she typed with 2 fingers, application to graduate schools in the United States. We got used to get rejection letters. Sorry, sorry, sorry. And that went on for many, many moons. And finally, one day, Dr. Shanklin comes to my lab and drops a letter on my desk, and he goes to his office. The mail used to come on a Friday afternoon. I hesitated to open the letter. I said, it's one more of those. So I finally got the courage to open the letter. There was an acceptance. From where? Jackson, Mississippi. I had no clue where Jackson, Mississippi was. So Dr. Shanklin walked back to my room and he was excited. I knew he was going to retire and go back to the United States. He had been there for a 3-year contract and lasted 35 years. He was leaving in June of 1962. And he came back excited. He says, my research grant has been funded by NIH. I'm going to go back to the Medical College of Virginia, where I had spent a year sabbatical a few years back. I showed him my letter. He looked at it and looked at it and he says, the U.S. Embassy will never issue a visa to go back to Mississippi. I said, well, why, Dr. Shanklin? He said, the skin of your color, boy. I had no clue what he's talking about. Finally, he said, you want to go to the States? I'm going to the States. I have a research grant. I have a histology technician appointment there. I can promote you to a research assistant. I write to NIH, and you can come and we travel together to the United States. Oh boy, the free 2 credit hours of this histological slides launched my career. All the courses I took in the biology department and everything else, biochemistry, you name it, the 2 credit hour course set me on the right track. So, he offered me the job, and it wasn't an F1 visa as a student visa. It became a DSP 66, which means I can come to the United States and work for a living, earn a living. So that's fantastic. So it was the beginning of Medical College of Virginia. We left in June. My lovely wife, very pregnant wife, and I arrived in Richmond, Virginia in September 1962. In December, our daughter was born. And so this is time for me to brag a little. I said, now to the bottom, she said, brag a little. I just wanted to see what brag a little is all about. Okay, as a foreign student in the Medical College of Virginia, there was an election for president of the graduate student body. I applied for it, I became the president. 2 foreign students, the whole Medical College of Virginia. And then the year after, it was for the president of the MCV, the whole MCV student body. I became the president of the MCV foreign student in Richmond, Virginia, southern state. And so here, look how handsome I was. Nabil, the president. Okay, that was fun. Now, our daughter was 3 years old, and there was a nursery school sponsored by the Medical College of Virginia to house the children of graduate students or medical students who are married and have children. And so she says to me, hey, I need to find a job. Why don't we put Rina, our eldest daughter, in the nursery school? We applied. What's nice about the nursery school, they charge you only a percentage of your income. no fixed fee. You made $200, then you can percentage to that. It was fantastic. So, as a consequence of that, okay, we went and tried to find a job for Rita. The question of finding a job for Rita was, she has never worked a day in her life. She was the daughter of a rich family, and working for women was not exactly right. So when we discovered that we were going to find a job, her father wrote us a letter and said, how much are you going to make a month? I will send you that money, you stay home. I said, come on, we're in the United States, we cannot do that. We can't take your father's money. So I went around, there was a blood bank. The president of blood bank was Dr. Hussein, an Iraqi fellow. So we spoke the same language. I went and said, Ali, can you help teach my wife how to do blood banking, you know? Teach her until she's ready, then you hire her. Oh, okay. He called his manager of blood bank and she said, see what you can do with this young lady here. 3 days later, 4 days later, 2 weeks later, she comes down to meet me at the end of the day. She has a check in her hand. I said, you're not supposed to be paid. It's a mistake. Let's go back and see Dr. Hussein. So we went up there, and Dr. Hussein said, let me call my manager. How come she paid her? She said to him, if you bring me trainees as good as this woman, I will pay them from the second to third day. In 3 days, she was able to run the business on her own. That was fantastic. Income. More money. We have a daughter. We collected the money that we had. We made sure the baby is fed properly, the young lady. And the rest of the food, whatever we could. After a few months at the blood bank, several weeks, I made a promise to her. I said, honey, I promise you whatever money you're going to earn to support me in graduate school, I'll pay you back. To this day, she has not seen a dime. So a few months later, she comes down and with tears in her eyes. I said, what's the problem? We met and went to pick up the daughter from nursery school. What's the problem? She says, I resigned. Why did you do that? They want me to work evening shifts and weekend shifts. I'm good now. And I said, no, I have a husband who's a graduate student and I cannot afford to give him good to taking care of our daughter. I'm sorry, I cannot take weekend work. So she resigned. So we went to look for another job. So what would we do? So we looked around, and there was a position open at the newly established Department of Radiology. Dr. Stuart Lippincott has come in from the Brookhaven National Laboratory. And Brookhaven National Laboratory was the first laboratory that would irradiate human beings for cancer. And he was invited by NASA with a $5 million grant to establish a Department of Radiology to look at the possibility of making sure the astronauts, if they should leave the space capsule, they will not be exposed to radiation that is not allowed. So we went to interview with Dr. Lippincott, and he said, have you done any histology work before? No. Only thing I've done is blood bank. He said, look, I'd like somebody who's never worked before. I want you to go spend 3 months in the Department of Pathology to show you how to make histological section, preparation, the whole works. After 3 months, you can come back. I pay you while you're there. Man, what a blessing that was. So she started working for Dr. Lippincott in the pathology department remote. After 3 months, she comes back to Dr. Lippincott, I'm ready. He says, okay, money is not an object. Equip the lab with everything that you need, that you learn from pathology, order everything that you need, the Cadillac of everything. So she would call me and say, what kind of microtome do I order? I said, okay, I'll come and help you. So Dr. Lippincott sees me in the lab. He said, what the heck are you doing here? Can't you stay away from your wife? I said, this is the good I deserve. I'm trying to help her set up your lab, man. I have been a histology technician before. She says, I know. You go back to the secretary and give her your social security number. You get paid for every hour you stay here. And extra money. Perfect. The only thing I needed was that kind of promotion. So, okay, so we started that. And then one day he came to me and he said, can you be off from your graduate studies for 4 or 5 days? I said, I finished all my coursework is finished. I'm working on my thesis. I can't take off. He says, for 5 days. I said, okay, what do I have to do? He says, you go order 600 mice. 600 mice. The next slide. 600 mice. You're at the station wagon. You put the 600 mice, 50 to a box with potatoes, not potatoes, raw potatoes. They would eat that for water, for humidity. And then you drive to Oak Ridge, Tennessee. In those days, it's a 2-day trip. So you stop at a motel on the way. You take 2 rooms, one for you and one for the mice. I did. It was fantastic. After the second, the stop in the motel, I had the water bottles. I put them in the cages for the mice so they can drink water overnight. The next day, I loaded them back in the station wagon and then out to Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I arrived at the cyclotron facility there, and they have already assigned me a loading area where I can load the mice. I loaded the mice in the cyclotron facility, and I went to my hotel room, which was preserved for me. I walked in there, and there is a bottle of Chivas Regal sitting on my counter. Oak Ridge, Tennessee was dry shit. You can have beer or wine in the restaurant. Non-alcoholic beverages anywhere. So I thought this was grand. Dr. Nabil got that. Now what happened to the researchers? Those guys started on Sunday heading to Oak Ridge. They hit every golf course on the way. And they met me on Friday evening in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So what do I do with these 600 mice? The next morning in the cyclotron, I had an electric shaver. I hold the mouse by the tail, put him on the top of the cage, he walked to the grid, and I swipe a little hair from the back of the mouse. 600 of them. Okay. 50 to 80. Okay, so we did. And then the loading of the mice. What did I have to do with the mice? Then you take a mouse and you take Scott. This is not a mouse, it's a fictitious mouse. Okay? You take a masking tape and you drape the guy around here. Okay? There is a hole in the back of the holder. The back of the holder is one like this. It has a hole in it. See? And you take that mouse, once you wrap it here, you hang it in front of the beam, the electron beam. And so this part of his back is exposed to the radiation. So the first 50 mice would run for 50 rats, then the next 150 will have 100 rats, and the next 150, and so on, until all 600 were exhausted. So that was fun. I did it. And the cyclotron facility was very beautiful. This is the one right here, the hole in it, if you can see that. Okay. And the next one was, we went over and then we saw, this is the cyclotron facility. Can you see the thickness of the wall in there? Okay. And the beam is coming through these walls into this facility right here. And there's the next slide shows you the door. Okay. The door is this one, right here. See the door right here? This takes 2.5 minutes to open. Okay, this one. 2.5 minutes to open. Okay? This 2.5 minutes to open, and they open the door, I walk in there, and I stick the mouse in front of the beam, I come out, they close the door, another 1.5 minutes. Every 4 minutes, we can run one mouse. And so, that's my job. I did. I kept going back and forth, loading the mice on the holders. See, I put the mouse on the holder, fictitious mouse, and I hang it in there. The next time I take one, put one in, and take the one that is irradiated out, and keep track of them. 50 of them for 50 rats. So that was fun. At the end of the trip, $500 check sitting on my desk in his office. Man, that was good money. A graduate student making that kind of money. The trip repeated. The next time he says, okay, why don't you 600 miles and a station wagon? I was smart. I said, there is a flight that goes from Richmond to Blacksburg in Virginia and stops in Blacksburg and then goes to Oak Ridge. Why should I drive this distance? I'm too smart now. So I got on board the flight with the 600 miles. We arrived in Blacksburg, and the pilot came out and says, which one of you guys is traveling with mice? Get the hell off of this plane and take the mice with you. The smell was coming to my cockpit, and I got sick and tired. So here's the humility for you. So I went there, down with the 600 miles, rented the station wagon. That was that. But the next trip, every 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, we do the same trip. Do you know how much the cost of renting the cyclotron facility at the Oak Ridge, Tennessee was? $14,000 an hour. $14,000 an hour. So I thought to myself, you know, this contraption here, the door opening and closing in 4 minutes, maybe I can do something better. So he told me, the next trip you go, why don't you hire another graduate student to go with you? My next door neighbor, very dear friend of ours, my wife and I, he was doing a master's and PhD degree in English. I said, Petey, would you like to earn $500 for the weekend? What kind of $500? Of course I can. I said, do you know how to handle a mouse? He says, I've never seen a mouse in my life. Don't worry, I'll teach you. So we hit the road, and we went to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and he helped me shave. He said, damn it, Nabil, he nipped me. A mouse bit him. He nipped me. Okay. So now I was getting very small. So I went to Dr. Lippincott. I said, Dr. Lippincott, why don't I take 2 mice and hang them in front of the beam? He says, you know, if the beam should shift, how are we going to know? To discuss how the beam shifts, there used to be a film called Polaroid. That was before you were born. The Polaroid film, if I were to take it and put it in front of the beam for a second, they expose it and you develop it, and then you know the beam is all over the place, it's continuous. If I were to put 2 of these mice in front of the beam, and after 50 mice were run, we take a Polaroid shot of this, and if they look like snake eyes, then the beam was all right. Then the 50 mice were okay. So I took 2 of these, and I went in there, and I put them side by side, and I came back. They're watching me through the camera inside, and they were laughing their heart out. So what's so funny? He says, the mice are smarter than you. So one mouse grabbed the masking tape of this guy and dropped him off to the floor. I said, Dr. Lippincott, it's okay. He says, if you have an idea, go practice what you want, and then come back to me and tell me about it. So I said, okay, I will do that. I went to the machine shop and fabricated this. I put a blinder right there between the heads of the mice. And we ran 2 animals every run. At the end of that run, I had a letter on my desk. When you graduate, you have an appointment in my department as an assistant professor in the Department of Radiology. I pay you $12,800. $5,000. I'm getting graduate school money, peanuts, working $500 on a long weekend. That's what happened. This is the launching of my second career. Okay? Making one stupid mistake, letting the mouse fool me, and then I took care of it. So the second launching of my career started. So if you want to take a look at this, when I put the Polaroid films in front of the camera, in front of the beam, you would see 2 snake eyes exposed, only on the Polaroid film. You know, the beam did not shift. The 50 mice were okay. We go to the 100 rats and we do the same. So we cut that the time. 4 minutes every time we run 1 mouse. Now 4 minutes we run 2. So that was quite a success story as far as I'm concerned. You don't believe me, but that's all right. Now, after that, I got employed by Dr. Lippincott, and so was Rita. So he says, I have a NASA research grant for $5 million. I wanted, they were meeting in a room in Virginia, and all big honchos are all around, and I'm in the back room. They were discussing what animal can we use to mimic the human skin for irradiation. I'm sitting in the back room. I had been reading a book called Swine in Biomedical Research. I said, miniature pig. What did you say? I said, miniature pig. What do you know about that? I said, that's the book I was reading. Go bring that book. I went to my office, I brought the book to these guys. These are big hunchers. I mean, I'm telling you, NASA people, big hunchers. And they looked at it, he says, well, what did you learn about these? I said, these are pigs that were brought by the early immigrants to the United States. They lived in swamps of Louisiana. Because they're in the shade, in the water, they lost their hair and lost their pigmentation. And they grow smaller because limited amount of food. They're about maximum 80 to 75 pounds. Oh, okay, they listened to me. And then before I knew it, he says, okay, man, we need to know if those pigs, the skin of the pigs mimics the human skin. So, before I knew it, I was sent into the biomedical research to find the miniature pigs. And let me tell you what that was, okay? That was in the Hanford site. Hanford was off limits. Here a Jordanian boy trying to get permission to go to the Hanford farm and see the miniature pigs. I was handed a camera, a very beautiful Hasselblad camera, another Polaroid camera. The Hasselblad was confiscated at the entrance. I was taken from the airport to the facility. I was sat in a car that totally blind. I couldn't see outside until we arrived at the miniature pig farm. And I took pictures of miniature pigs, the sizes and the weights and everything else that I needed to find out. Special permit was granted to me by White House to be able to go there. In case you didn't know, I didn't know. In case you didn't know what this site was, here read that. The hell did I know anything about this? There was a Manhattan Project, and that is where atomic energy was created. So, after I took those miniature pigs, I had to go down to Santa Barbara, California, and maybe I go back. I had to go back to Santa Barbara, California, where the Atomic Energy Commission had to design a pig holder. With the measurements I had, they were made of plexiglass. There is a little place for the pig's head to go in, and then his body and his tail on the other end. And they had a window on each side, plexiglass window that we can remove to produce the beam with the whole animal. Okay? And they made it so beautiful. So we entice the pig in with a little bit of food. He goes in, and we put the pig under his neck, pig behind his feet, in front of his feet, the back rope, and he is caught in there. I was told not to turn the pig around, don't rotate him, because he will die if you put him on his back. So we have to irradiate him one side, turn him over, and irradiate the other side. The idea was, how far is the penetration of the beam going to be? So because we decided to use the side of the pig, we took biopsies from each side of the pig, and we measured the thickness, epidermis, dermis, the whole ones, in microns, to know how much is the thickness of the pig on that side, the skin on that side. We did that, Rita and I did. We measured everything, and we delivered the information. We said, okay. We started with the first group of pigs that were shipped from California, from the Ashland farm, airflown to Newport News, Virginia. So there is a cyclotron Newport News that we could use in the Hampton area, and this is the miniature pig. This is what we found there. Okay, they are very cute fellows. And so when my daughter went to school, they asked her, "What does your daddy do?" She said, "He takes care of pigs." So, the Atomic Energy Commission, Santa Barbara, California, designed the holder, and I came back with the holder after a few weeks at arrived and then we had to move. My wife and I had to move to Hampton, and I went to visit the very famous facility, you know, here. Oh, and they sent me this letter, and with it was this beautiful picture. And you see again how handsome I was then. Don't look at me now, okay? And you see that was in the Langley Research Center. So an Indian boy, born in Nazareth, getting that far ahead in his life, unbelievable. But with the nagging of my wife, we managed to do that. So now how can you tell the pig to pose for you? Okay, I took my Hasselblad camera. You know where you tie the tripod at the bottom? I made a rod, aluminum rod. And on the end of the aluminum rod, I made a frame. Can you see that frame on the side right here? This frame right here? That's aluminum frame. And the end of it is attached to the camera. So we put some food in front of the pig against the wall. I come in with my camera. I focus on the label, the animal's label here. And I shoot the picture. You have to do that every day. 20 pigs, different radiations. But that was not good enough. We found out the thickness and all of that. We found out how much the beam was radiating and all of that. And finally I was told, hey, call Houston, Texas, the National Aeronautic and Space Administration. Why? Ask them for a spacesuit material. Why? Well, we need to dress the pig with the spacesuit material, and we irradiate into the spacesuit material. So I picked up the phone, I called Houston, Texas. This is Dr. Azzam from Hampton, Virginia. I want spacesuit material. How big? I said, enough, the house is big. Mrs. Lippincott was a seamstress, so she tailored the spacesuit material to the pig. So we put the spacesuit material on the pig, and now we irradiate through the spacesuit material to the skin. Okay? And with due time, we realized that the spacesuit material was not strong enough to prevent the animal from getting radiation. We recommended to the Houston people down the Aeronautic Space Administration to add 2 more layers or 3 more layers. It used to be 14, they went to 17 layers, and that was safe enough for the astronauts to be able to leave the space capsule and walk out into outer space. Can you see how important I was? And this is the outcome of all my work. It was published, and if you can see, this is my name down here. Okay? And now, if you look at the names of these scientists, they come from South Carolina, from the Citadel, from Hampton, Virginia. Dr. Fulci, see his name down there? Dr. Fulci, where's Dr. Fulci? Brenda? Fulci is not here. Yeah, here. He is the guy that designed the orbit through which the space capsule should leave the Earth and go on. I was a young fellow, and he was a senior scientist. He looked up to him. So Dr. Fulci was there, everybody else, you know. And so the paper was published, and effect of monoenergetic low energy electrons on the pig skin. And that was published in 1969. And these were the images that were taken. The histological sections that Rita made of the biopsies that we took from these animals were included. 4 of them. These other 2 showing you that the effect of the white penetration did not happen to reach the skin. Because the pig skin was white and hairless, it was useful for us to be able to use the miniature pigs. And if you look closely, these are the paper was accepted for publication in 1969, and all of these big honchos, my little me. I am the one who was the technician in the whole deal. I knew nothing about the radiation, nothing about the beams and whatnot. I was the technical person making sure they do everything right and taking care of pigs. After that, my wife and I were enticed to stay in the United States because our daughter was born here and we could stay in the United States. But conscience tells us, no, 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 we have finished our education, we need to go, or they get to go back home. The conditions were, if I wanted to stay in the United States, the Jordanian government should say they have no need for me. But at that time, we decided to go visit the family. So we went to Aleppo, Syria. That's where I met my wife. And the family said, hey, there's a new medical school being started in Damascus, in Aleppo, Syria, by the World Health Organization. Why don't you go pay attention, see what we can do. So I went. The dean was not there. He was in Damascus. I went to Damascus. I didn't see him. I went back home. I wrote him a letter. I said, this is who I am, professor of anatomy. I'd like to come and help you. So he wrote me a letter. He says, I cannot pay you enough. Why don't we send your recommendation, WHO, maybe they will offer you the position a lot more money. Before I knew it, we were leaving Richmond, Virginia, Hampton, Virginia, and Newport News. Dr. Lippincott wasn't happy to see me go. But we headed out to Aleppo. I was professor of anatomy for the World Health Organization. Started a new medical school in Aleppo and stayed there for 3-4 years. And then the government of Syria decided they want to teach in Arabic. I had never learned anatomy in Arabic. So I said goodbye. Goodbye. And we immigrated back to the United States, and I ended up in Iowa City, Iowa. I had no idea where Iowa City was. I was at a national meeting, anatomy meeting in New York City at the Waldorf Astoria. And the chairman of the Department of Anatomy offered me a job. Where? In Iowa City. So I called my brother and I said, hey, he's in Seattle. Why don't you send me something about Iowa City? He went to the American Automobile Association booklets, one paragraph, half a page. So we packed our family, we came to Iowa City, and that's where we stayed for a few years. We bought a house and we settled for a few years until the Kuwaiti government decided to look for somebody who can teach anatomy. So WHO got the Kuwaiti government to contact me. I went for an interview here at the Watergate, and I didn't want a job. I just was curious. We came back for a visit. He said, the dean said, can you have breakfast with me in my room 6 o'clock in the morning? I did, and he offered me the job. Professor of anatomy at the newly established Kuwait University Medical School. There were no students then. So in February, my wife and I head out to Kuwait. We stayed there for 7 years. I saw the first class graduate. After that, there was a lot of rumors about what's going on. I was the elected American citizen to represent the faculty at the Kuwait, American Kuwait Embassy. And I hear, how many cars do you have? 1. How many family do you have? 6. Do you have any gasoline tanks? No. Why? You must have some. I started worrying about it. Shipments were coming to Iraq through Kuwait harbor. So in 1984, I decided enough is enough. We saw the first class graduate, we skipped and came back to the United States, back to Iowa City. And here I am back in Richmond, in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. I enjoyed talking to you. I hope you enjoyed this. 2 things in my life launched my career. Blindly, I did it with no hesitation. Thank you very much.
Thank Dr. Azzam for sharing with us. Certainly I did not know all of that about his career, and I'm hoping everyone learned a lot too. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question. So you sort of left out the most important thing to someone like me who's trying to understand like how to go really far in life. Namely, that's how do you like find such a beautiful and awesome wife?
We were in Aleppo. There was an Aleppo boarding school. I ended up in Aleppo boarding school. I was born in Nazareth, in Palestine, became Israel. I had to go out of Israel because they were schooling for me. The old man sent me out. My mother sold me 50 sterling pounds in the seat of my underwear to Jordan. I ended up in Aleppo College. And there was Aleppo High School for girls and Aleppo College. And so my wife and I used to look at each other over the no man's land. And that's when we met. And then when I went back to the American University in Beirut, I looked at the girls at the American University. They didn't want to date me, so I didn't want any of them. So I went back into my old book and I found her.
Dr. Azzam, as you know, I often accuse you of practicing medicine without a license. Could you please tell the story, I think it's a true story, of how you made a diagnosis from thousands of miles away about a neck mass in one of your daughters?
Thank you, Dr. Holt. Dr. Holt and I teach anatomy to the nurse anesthesia students, and he and I are partners in the medical student anatomy class. So, my eldest daughter stayed at the University of Iowa as a student at the university, and the three of us, 3 kids, and my wife and I went back to Kuwait. I got a call from her one day in Kuwait. She said, "Dad, I have a lump in my throat." I said, "Is it solid or soft?" "Oh no, no, it's pliable, it's soft, I can move it around." I said, "Okay, please do me a favor. There's a neighbor of ours across the backyard. He's in the department of ENT and so on." I said, "Go to him and say, my dad said you ought to look at this." He says, "Where is your dad?" I said, "In Kuwait." He says, "What did he tell you this?" He said, "It's thyroglossal cyst." He looked at her and he said, "Your dad told you that?" "Yes, sir." So remember, thyroid gland develops in the tongue. It goes down, and the thyroid gland comes down to settle in the anterior aspect of your neck. The thyroglossal duct ceases, it closes. My daughter decided to have thyroglossal duct open at age 18. So there's saliva gathering in front of her neck. So a good doctor behind the house said, "Okay, let's come into the hospital, I will tie it, and we get rid of it." That was, "Where is your dad?" "In Kuwait." "Diagnosed you that far away?" "Yes, he did." I have a great deal of respect after that. Dr. Holt always accuses me of teaching and practicing medicine without the license. There was an incident that happened in this last semester. And one of the cadavers, there was something in the inferior vena cava. Some of you are already familiar with that. I mean, it looks sharp, some edges coming out of the edges. He called me, he says, I don't know, Dr. Holt, let's cut the inferior vena cava and see. As soon as I cut the inferior, oh, I know what that is. It's a filter. So we took a look at the filter, we impressed the students, we knew what we were doing. A couple of months later, we were in the gross anatomy lab. Dr. Holt is with me. I looked around, he's not there. What happened, Dr. Holt? I don't know. A few minutes later, he comes back to the lab. He says, "Nabil, I was so pleased that you really impressed me so much that they granted me great feeling because I saw another cadaver, and it's the same thing, and I told them exactly what it was." You promoted me so much. Thank me for telling him what he should do as an Thank you, Dr. Holt. Yes. Orlando, and I know you very well. Don't give it.
That's why I call you Dr. Awesome. I didn't know quite awesome story you were telling us, but so in hindsight, this is a pretty awesome story, and what I wanted to ask you is, I'm sure that it was a lot of struggle, a lot of hard work for you to get where you are today. What word of motivation do you have for us? Because at this point in life, we know that it seems like an endless road of hard work to get where you are today. So what kept you motivated and energized?
The nagging wife.
So that should be behind me.
She was behind me 150% of the way. I never paid her a single dime. Remember that.
I'm still waiting.
She's still waiting to be paid. Thank you, Orlando. But you know, it's a never. You come from the overseas to the United States, and you know you have to succeed. There is no way you can fall and way back. The Medical College of Virginia had a terminal master's degree in anatomy. If you pass that, you can qualify to go to the PhD. If you didn't qualify, you're no good, you're given a terminal master's degree and kicked out. You think I was going to be kicked out after a master's degree? No way. PhD was the ultimate goal. 1968. the dean of the foreign students came to my wife and said to her, Mrs. Azzam, I am sorry, we don't have a degree for the wife who stood behind husbands to see what he is. We should have offered you the degree, not your husband. Honest truth. Dean Baker was his name. Remember? Dean Baker. This has been lots of fun, guys. I have never done this before. The earlier part of my life would have taken another session. It's a whole different story. But today, I think you hopefully learned something about it.
Any
Good.
questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Azzam.